From the beautiful mountains of western North Carolina, just outside the Blue Ridge Parkway, under the stars and around our mysterious blue planet, you are listening to
Shadows in the Dark.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shadows in the Dark. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah Greer, along with my co-host, Sonia Dorr, which I actually forgot to take with me this past weekend to the Paranormal Conference, and I felt kind of bad about that. But he is sitting right under the monitor with that goofy smile, as always, just staring right back at me. But I want to welcome everyone to the show tonight, and I see we already have quite a few piling in the chat room there, and if you are out there listening live and you want to join us in the chat room, you can do so. And for all those who are signed in as a guest, if you sign up for a free Blog Talk account, you can participate in the chat. Otherwise, you just can watch it scroll by. So make sure to do that if you want to take part in the chat. It's free. It's very simple. So we'd love to have you taking part in the chat where you can ask questions and be a part of the show. That's what we want. We want all of our listeners to be a part of the show as much as possible. So join us in the chat room. Well, I hope nobody missed us. We were kind of on a little bit of a vacation there. We broadcast this past Saturday, and then, of course, the holidays rolled around, and as usual, we don't broadcast around the holidays, so I hope nobody really missed us there. I hope everybody filled up on a lot of turkey. I know I ate some more. I really ate more than I should have, but I tell you what, it was delicious. So I hope everyone had a great holiday themselves. And, of course, we're right around the corner to more holidays. So this year is just flying by. I don't know if everybody else is happening for them, but, man, I tell you, it's just happening so quick. Well, let me tell you a few things we have going on right now with the show and outside of the show, just so you know. One big thing that's coming up here near the end of the weekend is that our website will probably be down for a couple of days, few days. Not sure exactly how long, because we are actually, the server that we're hosted on is physically being moved. So we're not just moving the site to a new server. The actual whole server is going to be moved to a new location, and to my understanding, this is going to take place Friday. And how long it's going to be down, I'm not real sure. So we'll see what happens with that, and then definitely let everyone know once we come back up. So, this isn't, I guess we got somebody saying next week, which it's Olaf is there in the chat room with us, and this is kind of who is moving the server. So he's saying next week. So maybe he can give more details when the site might be down and for how long. Just look forward to that. But the show, of course, is still going to be going on as usual. This doesn't affect, the show at all, just the website, the forum, and the web store. So expect that to come up. Another thing, on our newsletter, definitely had a lot of people signing up for our newsletter. I want to just tell you a few things to make sure that you do get the newsletter and everything runs pretty smooth for you. First off, AOL just doesn't work. If you have an AOL account, if you sign up for the newsletter, we're probably going to delete it out. And this is nothing against AOL. It's just we've tested it. We set up an account ourselves, and nothing makes it. The confirmation letter, the newsletter itself just doesn't seem to make it. So, we haven't figured out how to get around that. Now, another thing is make sure you check for your spam at least the first time that you sign up, because there is a good chance that it gets sent to that. All you have to do is say it's not spam, or add us to your contacts, or whatever the case may be, just so your email provider knows that anything from newsletter at shadowsinthedarkradio.com is not a spam email. For some reason, whatever we do doesn't work with AOL in that case. So make sure to do that as well. Now, of course, everyone knows this past weekend we broadcast from the Green Park Inn, and I tell you what, that was a lot of fun. That was a beautiful place, and if you are ever in North Carolina up towards Blowing Rock, you need to check out this hotel. It is old. It's got just a rich history to it, just some great haunted stories. It was a a beautiful place. We had a great time. So I want to definitely give, a thanks to Scott Nicholson, who put it all together and allowed Shadows in the Dark to be a part of this and to broadcast from there and even give a presentation. I had the pleasure of giving my first presentation at a conference, and I got to speak on using your resources, getting out there and researching the material, understanding the theories that are out there, the techniques used specifically for ghost hunting in this case, because this was a lot of what this conference dealt with. I think about 150 people in total showed up for this thing, and I tell you what, these hallways were packed with people up and down the hall, going into rooms, looking for ghosts. So it was a lot of fun. We had a great time, got to meet a lot of very interesting people, share some stories. So this is going to take place again next year as far as my understanding is. So if you get a chance and you're up this way, maybe you can stop by the Green Park Inn Paranormal Conference. We had a lot of fun at it. Now, one last thing before we take a quick little break, and then we're going to welcome our special guest tonight, Clyde Lewis, is that if you are near Asheville, North Carolina, and you are interested in crystal skulls, as we talked about Sonador here, or My Little Crystal Skull, Max, the famous crystal skull, the Texas crystal skull, will be in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, Joanne Parks will be bringing him to Earth Spirit Center. That is the name of it. Earth Spirit Center on December the 5th, 6th, and 7th. And you can find out more information about that at earthspiritcenter.net. Now, I'm going to try to make it there. There's 3 days. It's about a 30-minute drive for me, so I am going to be there for sure and check this out. I mean, it's a chance to see one of the most famous crystal skulls that are out there, one that is really talked about a lot and definitely in public display all over the place. Joanne travels all around with it, so this should be a very interesting thing. So if you are around Asheville, North Carolina, or just want to make the trip now that gas prices are finally at a very affordable price, that is December 5th, 6th, and 7th, and you can visit earthspiritcenter.net for more information. You'll see it down on the right-hand side. It says Max the Crystal Skull. So if you're there, we will see you there. Well, let's take a quick little break, just a minute or so. When we come back, we're going to welcome our guest on, Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio. So this is going to be a great show tonight. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, some very interesting stories. So, I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun. So if you're out there listening live, join us in the chat room and take part. You can definitely ask questions through there. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Want more from Shadows in the Dark? Visit our website and sign up for our free newsletter. Become a member in our forum and check out our online store. Just visit www.shadowsinthedarkradio.com, where the darkness is illuminated.
Clyde Lewis is a talk radio personality and actor. He is the creator and host of Ground Zero, a talk radio show dealing with paranormal and parapolitical topics. His writings have been featured in UFO Magazine and Chris Fleming's Unknown Magazine, and he has appeared on Sightings and Strange Universe. Clyde, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very grateful you decided to have me on, and I'm looking forward to a great show tonight. So just throw things at me. I'll be ready to tell you anything you want to hear.
All right. I'm looking forward to it because I have definitely been told a lot about you from a mutual friend of ours, Alav.
Well, the truth is out there, that's what they say.
Exactly. So,
right.
Well, let's start off. How exactly did you get interested in the paranormal and parapolitical? Let's start off with that.
Well, some of the interesting things in my background where, the way I got into the paranormal more than anything else is I lived in South America for a while, saw a lot of strange things there. I lived in Buenos Aires for about 3 years and was exposed to things like voodoo and brujeria and several ritualistic things, several UFO sightings in the area, strange anomalous activities there, things that you just could not explain. I was able to examine and look at and talk to people who had very, very, very deep religious beliefs with regards to the Virgin Mary and Catholicism, which was very, very, in my opinion, pagan. But it went beyond that. Before I left and before I lived in South America, I was actually working with several people. Had a little bit of a touch of radio bug in me. Was a producer for a radio show that was on mornings in Bountiful, Utah. I also was a producer at a gospel station, and it was kind of one of those funny things where, gospel stations bored the hell out of me, but I was able to, rise above that and meet a lot of interesting people. One of those people I was able to meet was a man by the name of Wolfgang Gossett, who happened to be an Antioch priest. And this Antioch priest he'd take me on ghost hunts, and he'd teach me the right ways to do investigations. I thought the guy was kind of a crazy old man, but he taught me a lot of things about the Kennedy assassination and conspiracy theories. He introduced me to William Cooper, the man who wrote the book Behold a Pale Horse. I was able to meet all these wonderful people through this gentleman by the name of Wolfgang Gossett, who now, I come to find out, he passed away in 2003. He actually lived in Depot Bay, Oregon. He was actually about 80 miles south of me. Didn't even know it because I moved to Portland in 1999. Lost track of him after that, and then he moved to Depot Bay. But then I come to find out after discussing and getting some phone calls from a man by the name of Galen Cook, who's a private investigator from Spokane, that I was actually hanging out with none other than D.B. Cooper, the man who was the hijacker, who, actually he's a suspect in the case, right? William Pratt Gossett, or Wolfgang Gossett, who had this identity as he first was a military intelligence officer, worked for the Air Force, the Army, was jumped parachutist, that sort of thing. Is now believed to be a suspect in the D.B. Cooper case. In fact, a very, very, very sure suspect, if anything else, because of the DNA that they have of both the suspect D.B. Cooper, Dan Cooper, which is a fake name anyway, and Wolfgang Gossett, who just happens to be the man who said that he was D.B. Cooper. And I just got back from Ariel, Washington, which is a small, it's not even a town, it's kind of an area near Kelso, near Cougar, right at the base of Mount St. Helens where the volcano exploded, and just kind of hung out at the general store there. It was kind of like going back to Mayberry, I guess, and, the sheriff with the one bullet, that kind of thing. And they were having a D.B. Cooper festival, and we met up with a few people who had their claims about D.B. Cooper, and amongst the Bigfoot, the Bigfoot pictures and the D.B. Cooper pictures, I managed to talk with a few people, including the chief communications officer. His name is E.E. Van Valkenburg, who he's the Chief Communications Officer of Air Force One, talking with him. Very interesting gentleman, talking with him about all the presidents and about D.B. Cooper, and I told him who I think the suspect was, and as I was digging through the information, I managed to find a calling card for the Reverend Wolfgang Gossett from Salt Lake City, Utah, who I guess made an appearance there at the D.B. Cooper gathering sometime, I guess, before he moved to Oregon. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You just go there and you run into some, it's kind of like seeing the ghost, if you will. Yeah. And the investigation is still pending. Galen Cook is still working on the case. He's been working on it since 1982. That was about the time I met Wolfgang, between 1982 and 1984. And so it's been a really interesting year for me as far as, having some revelations about some of the people that I've known in the past. What's even more interesting is there was a comic book writer. His name is Aaron Lucchese, Aaron Duran, who I've worked with before, and he was telling me that he was writing a comic book about about a training camp for the Men in Black, the MIBs, and in one of those episodes of this comic book, I am one of the characters, and he says that I'm an MIB that was trained by none other than D.B. Cooper, and he wrote this story prior to the revelation that I may have been trained and was mentored by Wolfgang Gossett, who is now a suspect in the D.B. Cooper case. So it's kind of a fun little aside about me. I've had all kinds of synchronicities happen in my life, and a lot of strange stuff happen in my life, and I'm sure that's why I'm on your show tonight.
Yeah, and I want to get into the D.B. Cooper case a little bit more, but first, so how long have you been into this, the paranormal, the parapolitical, the strange and mysterious world?
Well, I would say since the probably my first interest was when I would get my hair cut at my father's barber shop. There was a group of men all get together talking about conspiracy theories. They're mostly Birchers and people like that, talking about the New World Order and talking about, certain conspiracy theories, Kennedy assassinations and things of that nature. But it wasn't until about, I'd say, and we're talking, this was about 1979, 1980, right when I was in high school. And then I ended up going to Argentina, and I ended up meeting Wolfgang. I ended up meeting all these people who are also influencing me to go that direction. But one of the things that I realized is that after I had published a sci-fi fanzine called B-Lane, which was a kind of a way for me to survive the lean years. I wrote several stories, and I also wrote scripts for certain movies. I wrote a movie called Nightfall, and it was a vampire film that I wrote with a guy by the name of Kevin DeLulo, which got me my I guess you could say it got me my gig as the Toxic Avenger for Troma Motion Pictures. I'm the voice of Toxie. For those of you that love the Toxic Avenger, I am that voice. Uh-huh. And and as that was going on, I tended to get a little bit more, I guess you could say, cynical and real skeptical. Not being a jerk and saying, "Oh, I've made my mind up," but I became real skeptical, and I decided, well, I'm going to do Ground Zero, which was a show. Actually, the original name of the show was Cult Radio. It was Cult meaning K-U-L-T, or ultra light transmission, but it also was short for MK Ultra Radio, Cult Radio. Mm-hmm. And the name didn't stick because I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the Mormons didn't like the idea of me calling it Cult Radio, so I decided to change it to Ground Zero. Well, unbeknownst to me, it was April Fool's Day in 1995 when I first took to the air, and 2 weeks later, Oklahoma City happens, and they start calling Oklahoma City Ground Zero.
All right.
And people are saying, "Oh, how unfortunate you called the show Ground Zero." I says, No, let it go. It's going to be fine. This is what I was, talking about and predicting. And then Ground Zero was really successful. I was working at KCNR, which was a CNN affiliate. I was a CNN representative, and then I got tired of doing CNN and realized that, there were stories that weren't getting reported. And then it wasn't until about 1997 we had a number of things happen to me, one of which we're going to talk about tonight, which is the West Desert Alien incident. Mm-hmm. There was also a run-in that I had with the Heaven's Gate cult, and this was all accidental on my part. Remember the Heaven's Gate cult, and on a plane flying back from Las Vegas, Nevada, in August of 1997, I was on a plane flying back, and I was scared to death because the plane was shaking and wobbling and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and the pilot came on as we were flying home from Las Vegas, and he says, "I have some sad news." And I thought, oh, my God, the plane's going to crash. And the sad news was that Princess Diana was killed in an automobile accident in France. And I had a gentleman who sat next to me. He was a very, very, very well-dressed gentleman with an English accent, and he says, "They finally killed her." And he says, he gave me this big spiel about how, she was saying something about how they were all reptilians and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. And that was back when I was first introduced to people like David Icke, which I had dinner with after that, and got to know a lot of people in the paranormal field. And you mentioned Olaf Phillips, who I had a pleasure of knowing and still know, putting together. He was a big support of mine back in the day, chronicling all my information, putting me on servers that had been hidden in certain areas. And in fact, we had other people in the military that had put my server. In fact, I had my server at one time at Area 51. I had it at Hill Air Force Base in Utah, and so now I don't know where my server is. I think it's on GoDaddy, thank God. But it's it's just been an interesting little adventure for me, and it continues to be an interesting adventure. And people say I should write a book. I think I should write a book because I'm probably like the Forrest Gump of the paranormal world, being in the right place at the right time, and every story is like a box of chocolates, except I have to nibble at each one to find out where the caramels are because I'm trying to still find out, I'm the guy who nibbles the chocolates to find out where the caramels are, and that's exactly what I do. I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and every once in a while I find a story that I can really sink my teeth into.
Now, Olaf is actually in the chat room with us tonight.
Oh, fantastic. Hello, Olaf.
Yeah, so
I'd say hello to him.
So maybe we can talk him into calling in a little bit later on or something.
Yeah, he knows more about me than I know myself, and and even though I do like to talk about myself to a certain degree, I kind of want to. I don't want to embellish too much because I can have a tendency to do so. I think Olaf will put me on the straight and narrow and say, "No, Clyde, this is how it happened. This is what happened, really, seriously." So that's.
Yeah, he's already starting some jokes there in the chat room for you. So.
Oh, good. No, it wasn't David Icke on the plane. I see the chat room now. I wish it was. Yeah. No, it's somebody who knew David Icke, actually, and he gave me the phone number of David Icke, and I placed a call. First time I ever called internationally, I called David Icke on the telephone in London, and it was one of those things, and then he flew to Salt Lake City to actually do a presentation on my behalf, and I was very happy that he did so, and I remember having dinner with him, and he had his little boy with him. It was a great experience.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess you've really met some very interesting people through the years of doing this.
Uh-huh.
That was great. And, our show's only about a year and a half old, and we've just had great opportunities of meeting a lot of people. Of course, Olav has become a big part of the show, just to name one. And it's amazing. It's an amazing journey.
Right. And, and it all started, I think, it really had started primarily when I wrote my sci-fi, fanzine, because I was kind of dabbling into the paranormal, wanting to talk more about why is it that we have in our culture and the Zeitgeist those ideas of aliens, UFOs, ghosts, monsters everywhere you look, and where it all came from and why it's all there. And I went from that standpoint, saying, all of our fantasies and belief systems are based on myth and memes. I mean, I read Joseph Campbell, and it screwed me up for the rest of my life. The Power of Myth. If you haven't read The Power of Myth, you should go out and read it. If you haven't read Acharia S., you should go out and read her. If you haven't read, the Holy Grail books, go out and read those. I mean, because you find out that a lot of things that we believe and a lot of things that we hold close are based on some of the myths and mimetic triggers that are in our bodies and in our minds, and for some reason they're just etched into our subconscious or into our collective unconsciousness, and it just really, really bogs the mind at how we see repetitive ideas and images and things of that nature in history of what we talk about, which is the paranormal, parapolitical, and a lot of the ritualistic things that we do are all based primarily on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about or not a little bit, but as much as you want to, the West Desert Alien. Love has just drilled this into me. You've got to talk about this. So apparently I am excited of whatever the story is about.
Okay. Well, what had happened, this is where my career was propelled into the stratosphere, and now I'm kind of in a good simmer, which is nice. But back in, I think it was like 1997, 1996, I filed for Ground Zero, the show that I was doing, a story about a strange anomaly that wound up on film and in my office after I had offered $10 million for proof of a UFO. Now, I wasn't expecting anyone, any takers for that money, because at the time I was out to challenge the crazy reports of UFOs and aliens. In fact, I pissed off Linda Moulton Howe by doing this. She called me, and Art Bell was ticked off, and I was just saying, well, look, the $10 million that's up for grabs was basically an insurance policy that had all kinds of conditions that would make it impossible to even claim the money. Mm-hmm. There was some, I guess you could say, insurance house. If I paid $500, they'd say, well, here are the ideas. And my handlers at the time, people I had that were looking out for my career, allegedly, thought it would catapult my show into the stratosphere, and I trusted that they knew what they were doing, because this guy, he owned like 5-6 radio stations, and the other guy was some agent, and so, but what it did is it got me a lot of publicity from newspapers and television, and it was also, there was like people who were calling me from radio stations from Denver, Colorado to Ontario, Canada. I was talking with the CKTB out there, a number of people like wanting to talk to me. I mean, the X-Zone radio show was one of the big buyers. They always had me on to find out more about it, and so we had this big publicity stunt around the first day of spring. And what we did is we said, the swallows come back to Capistrano and the buzzards come back to I think it's Hinkley, Ohio. And hopefully by some strange luck, if we offer $10 million, I'm sure some UFO will land in the parking lot of the radio station in Salt Lake. And what we did is we also painted this huge UFO landing strip, which consisted of a big round circle, a big alien in the middle of it, and the words UFO, so it could be seen from the sky. We even went as far as to do that. And I remember that morning that we did it. It was kind of a cold morning. It was clear, though. It was really nice. We even had this backup plan. Our general manager was a helicopter pilot. And he was saying that he wanted to mount like purple lights on his helicopter and kind of like swoop down, to scare people, but that we never did that. But what we did do is we had coffee and bagels, and we handed them out to people. We had a good breakfast for everybody there, and news crews were there, and they basically stayed in their vehicles while I was freezing my butt off out there in the spring morning. And so what had happened was I had this guy that was with me. His name was Todd Herman, and he was doing the morning show with me, and we made it a big publicity stunt. And there was a guy who there were these two guys there, and they were wearing black coats, and they had on dark glasses. And Todd Herman jokingly said, "Well, hey, you guys look like you work for the government. Who do you work for?" And they go, "The government." And so there were people actually there from the government observing this, I guess you could say, the shindig where we're having this big deal. Well, nobody, of course, bought a UFO. Nobody proved the UFO was there, and of course I got a lot of crap from the Mutual UFO Network, but I was okay. It didn't bother me that I was having these problems. I figured, it's all for the idea of the investigation, right? And it's all for that. And so I kept up, doing this. But at the end of the event, after nothing happened, this guy who had curly hair and a mustache came up to me, and he said to me that he was a prospector. And he said he was like forging around an old log cabin in the middle of the West Deserts of Utah. Now, many people don't know this, but the West Desert of Utah has been speculated to be the new Area 51. And, because Area 51 allegedly is not doing as much activity, but they've moved all their operations, especially the operations of reverse engineering and things, to a place called the Eagle Test Range in Utah. It's, I'd say, 50 miles north of Area 51. Probably has a tunnel connected to Area 51, and a lot of soldiers that I've known there have worked there. And so this guy was saying, well, I was in that general area, and I was seeing a lot of military activity in the area. He tells me, he says, I saw jets flying so low I could see the men inside. He claimed that he was like the guys in the I guess he said the guys in the jets were like snapping pictures. He could see bright lights flash out of the ships, and he said he could see helicopters flying over. And he said he was taking pictures too, and so he said, I took these pictures, and one of the pictures he showed me was this picture of a grassy area in the desert. And I looked at it, and I looked it over, and I just wasn't getting it. He says, take a look at this picture. What do you see? And I said, I see absolutely nothing. What am I looking at? And then it was kind of like one of those things where you look into a picture, and then all of a sudden you start seeing something appear. And what it was is it was this ghostly image, and it looked kind of ghostly. It looked like it was, how, have you ever seen the Predator movies?
Yeah.
Kind of looked like that. Kind of looked like the Predator in a way, because it was kind of like half there and half not there. But I did see there was some form there. And I thought, yeah, okay, it could be simulacra for all I know. But I asked him what it was supposed to be, and he told me that he thought it was some sort of a ghost. And, of course, as I say to people, regardless of what you might think of me now, I was a very hard-wired skeptic back then, and I wanted so desperately to point out to the man that what he was seeing was simulacra, as I say. I said, some abstract pattern in the mind seems to want to see these things. It's like now you can look at a tree and you see the Virgin Mary, and there was also a bum that looked like Mother Teresa, and Jesus in your tortilla and Princess Diana on your shoelace. I mean, you see these things.
Right.
And I was just thinking, this guy has got, I said, here's a silly little picture and kind of fun to look at, so I'm going to put it on a website. And see, back in the day, I mean, a lot of people won't remember that back in 1995, 96, 97, in those times, the Internet was in its infancy. Yeah. I mean, no one had websites. They all just had little blogs where they put together little, hello, I'm on the Internet, Mommy, take a look at me. But, I had a full-on, broadcast, and I'm working with Olaf Phillips, and I'm working with, all these people who want to hear my show, and we actually broadcast Art Bell on the Internet. We were the first radio station to broadcast Art Bell on the Internet, and so we were like we were all gung-ho to get this new media out in the open. I thought, here's my chance to prove to the world that I am the king of the paranormal, and I'm going to post this picture of what looks like an alien sitting in the middle of the desert. Well, I figured, this picture, whatever, it's a craft's body sitting in the desert, and nobody's going to think, it's anything but just a strange anomaly in the thing. And then as I had the picture up on the Internet, I started to, get some people calling up, and they got angry about this because they were saying, oh, you're just trying to pull a hoax. This isn't an alien. This isn't something. This is crap and everything else. But the history surrounding it, I thought, was very interesting because, of course, the guy, the prospector, said that he was in the Eagle Test Range, which is an area located near Dugway Proving Grounds. It's situated in the West Desert. And he delivered them in hopes that I would find out what they were. And the more I looked at the photo, the more I thought that perhaps the image wasn't so anomalous. I blew it up a little bit. They even had a news crew come out and do some investigating on it. And one guy, the reporter says, "Is this an alien?" And the guy says, "I don't think it's an alien," you know. And I figured, what do you have it to compare it to, you moron? I mean, if it's not an alien, then what is it? Right. And so I was getting really, you know, kind of, I guess you could say, I was being a real jerk about it, because I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, you know, at first I was a skeptic. Now I'm looking at it thinking that maybe it's something to pay attention to. And so I just figured that what we do is we just put it up after the investigation by the television crew, and the television crew says it's nothing. I put it up, and see, back then, you know, in 1995, 1996, you need to understand, we didn't know what Photoshop was. We didn't know what any of that stuff was. I mean, that was still new. I mean, Photoshop was nothing that we were able to work out or we weren't savvy about. I mean, most people who had those photo manipulating programs were people who were into art, and we were just a bunch of radio talk show hosts. We didn't know what the hell was going on. So what had happened is that we got more news about how they were consolidating the Hill Air Force Base ranges, and how they were going to, you know, they actually did, I don't know if you've seen, they did the Stardust program where they actually fired something to get some dust out of a comet and bring it back. It was like this huge disc that they crash landed out there. I mean, they do a lot of weird tests out there. They also do laser tests out there. I mean, the whole area, you cannot fly over there because it's completely limited airspace. Well, they analyzed, as I said, the television crews analyzed the West Desert Alien, and they called it the West Desert Alien. The name stuck, and they did all this. They did all this investigation, found out it really wasn't an alien. I don't know how they came up with that idea, because it could have been, could not have been. But he said that he thought, and the guy confided in me, the guy that did the analysis on the picture, he says, what's in there is something real, but for some reason the way the light's hitting it is creating this image of what appears to be an alien. And so I just kind of, you know, I kind of just sat there and thought, well, if it's a shrub in the middle of the desert wash, and I see an alien in the shrub in the middle of the desert wash, and the light's hitting in a different way, then no one's going to be pissed off if I post it on my internet site. And so I urge my listeners to go to the website, and my hits increased. The picture was getting some attention. I was getting phone calls from Linda Moulton Howe and getting phone calls from other investigators wondering, you know, how I got the picture. And I actually discouraged them from pursuing the story, because what we were getting, you know, I was getting ready just to write it off as a light and shadow anomaly, say this is fake, you know, I mean, not fake, but it's a mistaken picture, of course, because it was inconclusive and we didn't want to promote a hoax. And, you know, because I believe that, you know, if I have to fake anything or say or report anything that's that way, I might as well just get out of the business. But we had an image. It was interesting to talk about. People say it's a bush. People say it's a shrub. People say, oh, it's an alien. People say it's something else. But emails. I started getting all these emails. And one of them purported to be from a government operative warning me that the photos were taken illegally and may threaten national security. And I'm thinking, what? You know, how is this going to threaten national security? And there was also the threats that I could be jailed for showing a top secret area, especially after the Gulf War. I mean, remember, we weren't even in the Gulf. We got out of the Gulf. Yeah. And this was a time where we were waiting to get back into the Gulf again. So they were saying that this is a top security threat because it was taken to the Eagle Test Range. And I didn't know. I started thinking of the, you know, repercussions of, you know, this picture being tested then we actually taken it at a test range. So I finally thought to myself, well, this is just shadows and light, and that's what I'm going to resolve it as. And that's why, you know, if I just give that story, nobody's going to bother me. But then the strangest began. And what happened was this, and this is where it gets really strange. One day, the receptionist of the radio station I was working for notified my program director that there was a guy for the government that was here to see him, not me, but him. And so I was called up front. The program director at the time, his name was Rick Emerson, showed up with me, and I was told to go back to the control room and find an archive of the show in the computer and email it to him. What it was is there was some sort of a cocked-up story that Rick had said something about, and I'll get this, that Rick had intimated that he wanted to rape the mayor of South Salt Lake's daughter. Mm-hmm. I have no idea where they came up with that bullcrap idea, but that was the reason why I was called in the back room. They were telling me, you need to find him actually saying that he wanted to rape her. And I go, he never said that. And they said, well, you need to find it now. And what that was, it was a cover for me to keep busy while they were discussing what they were going to do with me. And I found this out later on because I was told later on that was what was going on. It was a cover for them to get into the room and say, how long have you known Clyde Lewis? What is Clyde Lewis's problem? What is going on? You know, that kind of thing. So I was later asked to step out in the hall and speak with this guy. This guy was in this black coat. And he was wearing horn-rimmed glasses, and he had curly hair, and he had this little thin mustache, you know, that hugged his lip. It was kind of a strange-looking guy, and he was wearing these. All I remember is he had these huge black shoes on, and he looked like some guy from the 50s. He was wearing like this weird hat, and I didn't know. I mean, I was thinking, what is going on here? This guy is some sort of agent. And he said to me, I just talked with your program director, and he told me that you have the negatives to the alien photo that I had been talking about on the air. And I said, oh, you listen to my show? And he says, I don't listen to your show, no. And I said, I don't have the negatives because the picture doesn't belong to me. And then he said, well, do you have the picture up on your website? And I said, yes. And he said, will you take me to a computer where I can view this? And so I said, okay. So I went to this computer. We had this main computer in the control room that everybody used to get their email, whatever. And I said, could you tell me just who you represent again, so when I'm showing you this, I can talk about this on the air? And he says, I'm not at liberty to say who I'm with, and you're not going to talk about it on the air. And I said, well, I don't understand why you're being so snotty about this. And I took the photos and I showed them to him, and I said, what do you think? And he says, well, he said to me, do you believe that this is an alien, Mr. Lewis? And I said, I don't know. You tell me if this is an alien or not. Obviously, you're pissed off because I put these on the internet. And he looked up at me, and he said something to the effect, well, I can't tell you if it's an alien or not. I can only tell you that if I were you, I would remove it from your internet because you're making a total ass out of yourself. And I said, how am I making an ass out of myself? And he just shook his head, and he kind of, walked out indignant and kind of pissed at me. And I asked the front desk, I said to the woman that was at the front desk, I said, did this guy say that he was from the government? And she said, no, but he looked official, and I didn't want to mess with him. And I said, well, did he show a badge? And she said, well, no. And I was like going, excuse me, but this guy could have came in and shot us all. He could have, I was just ticked off. And so somehow she said, well, I just let him in because he looked like he was official. He said something about the mayor's office. He said something about Alyssa. And so I'm sorry that this made you feel weird. And so I asked Rick, I said, what did the guy want? And Rick said, well, he told me that he was there to investigate this thing about me and that I'd made some threat on the air to an elected official. He wanted a tape recorder with a sample, and I said I stalled, and then he turned around and he said that he wanted to talk to me about this picture that I put on, my website. And I said, well, this guy may have been a Men in Black or something. And so immediately I became like this walking X-Files episode. I'm like going, ooh, the Men in Black showed up, and this is really cool. And I put it on the air, and I'm like, yeah, baby, this is going to be the hottest thing ever. This is a great, this is a great thing. I mean, there's pictures on here, and it could be anything, and yet I got a visit from the government. This is really, and I was just like, I was a kid just thinking, this is going to be really cool, and that, and I thought maybe it was a prank too. I thought, oh, this is what was, the guy that, was the general manager, he likes to play pranks on people. In fact, he drove around in a vehicle that said U.S. government on it, and he used to always tell me that he was with the NSA, and I didn't know if I believed him or not, but I actually thought it was a big prank. And I was laughing. I was, come on, you guys, level with me. Is this a prank? Is this some sort of a joke? I mean, are you guys playing a prank on me? I said, no, not at all. And so this whole time I went along thinking that this is a lot of fun and, this is going to be, some sort of a prank pulled on me. And then the morning, I guess it was like a week or two. I'm not too, it's been so long ago, it's hard to figure out how the time of sequence events goes. But I was getting ready to go to work. I did news reporting for the morning show, and it was 4 a.m. It was cold outside. I got into my car. I drove this little Hyundai car, and this is the truth, I actually had one more payment on it, so I let the insurance lapse, which was really stupid. And I went to start the car, and I didn't let it warm up, so I just decided to pull the car out of the carport. The car just shut down completely. It turned off. And I pumped the accelerator and tried starting it again, and I heard this dull puff. It was kind of like a boom. And then I heard some metallic scrape. It sounded really weird. I mean, it's hard to describe it. And then, I'm not kidding you, I watched in slow motion as a ball of flame was shooting up from the hood of the car, and it went towards the glass, and the glass shattered, and it was a huge ball of flame and flash. And I realized, oh my God, my car has just been blown up. It's blown up. I'm in the driver's side. So I moved, and I don't know how I moved to avoid getting hit, but I moved out of the car, and there it was, the whole car engulfed in flames. And the flames kind of like backed off a little bit, and so I was worried that the car sitting in the carport would catch the carport on fire. So I went and I grabbed something, and I think it was my coat or something, and I grabbed hold of the handle to open up the car door, and I went to grab the steering wheel, and the steering wheel had melted, and I was trying to push it out of the carport with it on fire, hoping I didn't catch on fire, and I got a little burn. I got my knuckles singed, a couple things, and my eyebrows were singed as well. And I ran and I called the fire department, and they showed up, and there's the car, in the middle of the cold morning with huge flames coming out of it. And the strangest part of all was that, and I always describe this, is when the car was burning in the morning, I don't know, when a car catches on fire, it actually makes this horn sound. The horn dies, and so it goes, it's almost like it's killing me, It's like I'm dying. I'm burning to death. And so that was kind of a weird thing, and I was yelling and wondering what the hell was going on. The fire department showed up. They put out the fire, and then the one fireman said to the other one, he says, "You want to call the police?" And I said, "Why would I want to do that? The car just basically ignited, and something's wrong with the engine." They said, "No, this is what had happened," and they showed me the incendiary device. What they used was they made a pack of magnesium. They took magnesium and they packed it really tight in this, this paper sack, and they wrapped it with duct tape. And then they sat it on the carburetor, and they said this is an old trick. They said they had taken the injectors and they had snipped them so that when there was gas in the carburetor, so when I started the car and backed out, there was gas in the carburetor. That's how I was able to back out a little bit, without it conking out and still being in the carport. But what had happened is that when I started it again, because I hit the accelerator thinking that if I hit the accelerator, I'd put more gas in the carburetor, what I had done is I had shot gas into the spark plugs because the injectors had been cut. So you basically shoot the gas in the spark plugs, it ignited the magnesium pack, and boom, that's where you get your explosion.
Right.
And it wasn't to kill me, but it was there to pretty much frighten me. And it did frighten me. It frightened me a lot. I didn't know what to think. And there were other things that happened to me as well afterwards, like I was visited by a guy claiming to be an insurance adjuster. He had a video camera, and I said, well, I didn't have insurance on the car. He says, no, the insurance is for the apartment complex you were at. He videotaped me talking about the explosion, talking about the fire, talking about what may have been the cause of it. And then he handed me a small little videotape, and I don't have it now because, I'm divorced. My third wife and I divorced, and that was it after that. And she probably has it somewhere in her treasures of trash. But what had happened is he handed me the videotape, and I said, I thought this was for insurance. And he says, it is for insurance. He says, the next time you decide you want to open your mouth and you want to tell people that you're not going to do what we tell you to do, this will be insurance to keep your damn mouth shut.
Jeez.
And I said, oh, my God. I was actually threatened by this guy, and then he takes off. And the scary part later, though, was that I found out that it was an illegal picture, that I was told by a number of Army Air Force people that what the guy had snapped was a picture of something in the West Desert. They didn't say it was an alien. But what they did say is that it was a soldier that was wearing camo, and that it was certain camo that they wanted to test and use for more war, or they were planning on doing some more war situations in the Gulf and in places in the desert, and so it was desert camo. And they were testing it. It was some sort of desert camo where they used, according to what this guy was telling me, and I can talk about it now because it's not top secret anymore because they've been using it in desert in Afghanistan and in Iraq.
Yeah.
But what had happened is that they used, I guess, water bags to reflect the areas and the images that surround the soldier. And if you look at the picture, matter of fact, let me see if I can give this to you as a URL. If the people in the chat room listening to your show can go to www.groundzeromedia.org, it's /dis, after groundzeromedia.org, go /dis /Grey. That's GREY/GREY.htm. You can see the pictures. We were able to put them back up again, and I haven't had any harassment since then because now it's not a secret anymore. But the idea here is that what I probably put up was a soldier that was violating some law, and they wanted to keep me quiet about it. But then again, it still looks like an alien to me, and it could be a cover. But, I don't know. Looking back, I mean, it's still a very controversial photo. There are still UFOs that are being seen in the West Desert. There's still investigations going on. Now they say that the West Desert is now the new Area 51. So who knows what they were testing out there, and who knows what they were seeing out there. But the picture, if you take a look at it, it kind of does look like a soldier with a helmet, goggles, and a microphone going down to his mouth, and a muscle that's being flexed as he's crouched in a gully somewhere. They could pick it up with a camera, but they couldn't pick it up with a naked eye. And so you take a look at the photo, and it's an amazing photo. And to this day, I still wonder what it could be. It still kind of looks like an alien to me, but, if the military says it's a soldier, am I supposed to believe that after they harass me? Who knows? But in the meantime, it's up for people to make up their minds as to what it might be.
Yeah, and I posted the links in the website, so hopefully they'll go check it out, because I'm looking at it, and when started the story, I posted it up there as well. And it's an interesting picture. I mean, to me, looks like an alien.
Mm-hmm. It does look like an alien, and people say, I see right there some guy named, Noxer says he thinks it's a shrub.
Right.
It's not a shrub. I mean, I don't get my car blown up over a shrub, and that always irritates me when people say I think it's a shrub. I didn't get my car blown up for some shrub picture. It was something. We caught something on film. Some guy thought a soldier with goggles.
Yeah.
One of those invisibly cloaks. Yeah. But see, that's the thing is that it says, how did they manage to take the picture? The guy was in an illegal area of the West Desert when he photographed the picture. That's why it was done. Yes, the photo can be used outside my website. I'm looking at I'm reading Google. If they want to use it, that's fine. You just need to send me an email at groundzeropdx@yahoo.com. That way I have it, because every once in a while I get a phone call from the prospector who I need to tell you that he was harassed by the Men in Black, and he spent 15 months in jail. He wound up getting thrown in jail over it. They finally tracked him down, and he's now living in Nebraska under a new name. And so I credit my show too, because that way, if the man who snapped the picture sees that it's somewhere else, and they say that it's from Ground Zero Media, then he will know that I gave permission for it. So just copyright it to me, and that way there won't be any problems. But yeah, I mean, it's like I say, I don't take a blown up car because I took a picture or have a picture of a shrub. And that was the funny part about it, is I heard people say it's a shrub, and at the time, a blown-up car doesn't mean it's not a shrub. No, it doesn't. But why would they go after my car and scare me if I had a picture of a shrub on the Internet? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's not like I'm trying to purport a hoax here. What we've got, and I can basically go down on the record of saying, I believe that what had happened is when that prospector snapped that picture, he thought it was an alien. I didn't know what it was. Turns out that it was some soldier in camo, because I had a lot of soldiers tell me that's what it was. And this was before the Second Gulf War, and they were using that kind of stuff before. So there you go.
Wow, it's an amazing picture, and I guess that kind of down on that one page, I guess there's a lady standing there and like a green looking jacket. I guess it's kind of somewhat of what we're talking about.
Yeah. But they used other things too. I mean, that's the camo or the stuff that they used. I guess they invented that in Japan or China or someplace, or Korea. I can't remember where. Why didn't the guy just go over and see what it was? It's because he was in an area that was restricted. Mm-hmm. He took the picture from a restricted area. See, I think a lot of people cannot fathom the idea that there are areas like Area 51 and other areas where you're shot if you get anywhere near that stuff. In fact, there are people who told me stories about how they have infrared fencing, that there are signs that say, "Do not cross this, or you will have your guts microwaved out." Right. There have been stories of animals that have gotten in the microwave fields that they have in those areas, and they don't tell you. There are microwave. It's kind of like having an electric fence, but you walk through the microwave fields, and it literally turns your guts to soup. And there have been guys who I know who have told me that there have been animals that have gotten through those microwave fences, and you find them, and they have eyes as big as basketballs because they've been fried from the inside out. Those are some of the things that I think people cannot comprehend what the military has and what they're using in the West Deserts of Utah. I mean, people are so used to, X-Files and gates and sentries placed in certain areas, but in the West Deserts of Utah, there is nothing there. I mean, it's all salt flats, and the only place that's nearby is 120 miles west, and that's Wendover, and that's a little small town where you can gamble. So, I mean, there you go.
Wow. Now, how long? So this took place around in 1992, correct? So when it all kind of started in 1992, right?
What did?
The whole West Desert Alien story with.
The West Desert Alien was like 96.
Okay, 95,
96.
Okay, there is something wrong there. But so once you took it off your website, how long was it before you put something back up that you felt you wouldn't be?
Well, I got a phone call from the guy who took the picture, and he told me that he was under an assumed name. He lived in Nebraska.
Right.
And he said that now would be a good time if you'd like to put it up. It would be fine to put up now because, of course, we're in the Gulf, and and we're in Iraq, and we're fighting wars there, and the camouflage stories have been now a part of, they're part of the news now, so it's not that big of a secret that they've been working on that kind of project. And so, the photos I've said before are up there, and I saw a guy, this guy's really being a smart aleck in the chat room saying that, why would they put up a picture of a shrub if there's no shrubs in the Gulf? The truth of the matter is there is sagebrush and things like that. I mean, it's not just shrubs out there in the middle of the Gulf. There's digital camo that they have to have where there are different colors that they have to use to blend in. It was just an experimental tool because the Utah desert is the same terrain as Israel and the Middle East. If you take a look at Utah, there's a huge Great Salt Lake, and there's a fresh lake that is similar to the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee. It's called Utah Lake and the Great Salt Lake, and there's even a river called the Jordan River that connects both of them. So the whole area is a training ground for desert warfare. Mm-hmm. So that's why they would have that picture in the middle of the West Desert. And if you think it looks like a shrub, that's your prerogative, but it's not a shrub. That's sagebrush, and it's dirt and everything else. Obviously, this guy has never been in the West Deserts of Utah, and he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Mm. All right.
Yeah, Nicola, you are so right. Moab is a dead ringer for Pakistan. You're so right. That's so right. He is correct. That whole area of Utah is a dead ringer for the Middle East.
Right. All right, and I'm glad you're watching the chat room. It's always great when I get a guest on that kind of watches what's going on there. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep up with it all. Mm-hmm. So, but I tell you, that's just a fascinating story. And to me, even the camo-looking shrub-like, to me even seems more like a some kind of invisibility technology that maybe. Right. Maybe not just that the camouflage looks like shrub, but maybe it can blend into its environment. Regardless.
Well, it was just the idea that it was camouflage that was using, according to what I was told, and I don't know. We could do research on it. I was told that they used water bags on the suits to reflect the general area of where they were at.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be in an area where there are sagebrush and dirt and rocks. And so the whatever that picture is, the soldier that was in that picture, whatever that soldier is, it was camo that was created by using water bags. And so, that was what it was. It was reflecting the general area, and especially in an area like the Middle East where there's sand everywhere and mirages are everywhere, you don't know what you're looking at. And that's exactly what that looks like. It looks like a mirage. It looks like it blends in with the sagebrush and the dirt. And so, so that's that's what it was at the time. That whatever that was, that soldier was standing there in the field was actually blending in with the surroundings because he had that kind of stuff on.
Right. So if he'd have been standing out in the middle of a forest, it would just would have reflected what's around him, and you would have got kind of the same effect.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I can put to bed the idea that it was an alien. It was called the West Desert Alien for a time because it looked like an alien in the middle. And, of course, they use aliens all the time to, kind of throw you off from some experimental technology that they're working on. Of course, I've said that before with Roswell. I don't believe aliens crashed at Roswell. I think it was Nazi experiments that were going on down at Los Alamos during the time. And so, people, people will sit there and say, well, you think it's an alien, right? I go, no, I don't. I think it's something that's unexplained. It was proven it was something that was unexplained in regards to a soldier. And like I said, you don't get your car blown up over some sort of a shrub in the middle of the desert. I mean, that's something that, and it just pains me because it's like, people who say that, it just bothers me because it's like you didn't have to go through the horror of having your car blow up in the middle of the morning. You'd have to go through the horror of being told by the people who are running your website that they're being shut down, that they're going out of business because they've been threatened. You don't have the horror of having a guy who claims that, he took this picture being followed from Laramie, Wyoming. He's driving a dairy truck, followed from Laramie, Wyoming by two men in a black LTD. They take him out of his vehicle and beat the holy hell out of him. And then, after they beat him up and he beats back, he goes to jail for assault on federal officers. Yeah. So, we got in this big problem because of a shrubbery. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. The story doesn't make sense at all. I'm telling the story, and I have not made any money off of it, nor have I got any gain from it. In fact, it was probably one of the most horrible things that's ever happened to me in my career, and it's me being a smart ass, and that's what being a smart ass gets you. If you think that you can, and the truth of the matter is that these Men in Black stories you hear from everybody else and all this other stuff, I mean, we still have the evidence, okay? We still have the picture. We posted on the Internet. They didn't take it away. They basically told us to leave it alone and not play with it, and then after the heat went down, we decided to put the story out there again and say, listen, this is what happened. This is the story of mistaken identity, no aliens, more information, more secret information, and there's plenty more where that came from. If you want to go to aliendave.com, Alien Dave is a guy that I've known for a long time who goes to the West Desert all the time, and he snaps pictures of strange things that go on there all the time. So he's another guy that's out there doing that, and he's not making this stuff up. Wow. So there you go.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get ready to go to a break here, Clyde. So before we do, give your website out again, if you don't mind. Okay.
The website where they can go and see the West Desert Alien?
Or just your website.
They can read all my articles at groundzeromedia.org. But if they want to listen to some of my programs, they can go to ideocast.com. That's IDEOCAST.com. And right now, there's a new program, a group of people out of Texas who put together something called GroundZeroTotalRecall.com, where they actually play classic shows from the early years of Ground Zero. So, and right now, the reason why I'm not on the air is because I'm recovering from cancer. I was diagnosed with double renal cell carcinoma last year, and I had two very painful operations, and I'm recovering well from it, and I get my final results in December. So I'm actually recovering from that, and then hopefully I'll be back on the air again and telling more interesting stories.
Yeah, I tell you what, just one we just heard just is amazing. And,
right.
And I've definitely heard some people tell me about your show. I haven't got to, I've checked out some past shows for sure, and it's a good show, and I've heard a lot of great things about how well it's done. What kind of listener base did you have at when you were airing live?
When I was on in Salt Lake City, I had a 50 share, which means that I had 50% of the audience, and that means audience surveyed was listening to my program. When I moved to Portland and did the national show, we were on in 14 markets, 3 of which were top 3 markets, and that was a good bust out for a new show. And then when I was on in Portland locally, we were pulling a good AM share. Actually, Jeff Rentz, who used to be on this market, was taken out because I was on the air. My show is very powerful. I'm not, I bring the stories as honest as I can. And as I say, I'm not going to fake anything. I'm not going to make up some stupid story. And it's like this, people are in the chat room saying this doesn't really prove anything. Well, no, it doesn't prove anything. It just proves that we have an anomalous picture. It proves that, we had run-ins with people who were saying you shouldn't have printed that picture. It proves that what we did was stupid, and it proves that you need to be a little bit more careful when you're doing investigations into the paranormal. That's all it proves.
Right.
I'm not making any outrageous claims here. They called it the West Desert Alien, just like when the flying saucer crashed at Roswell. It wasn't a saucer at all. It was some spacecraft. They didn't know what it was. It was the media that called it a flying saucer. They had nothing to do with that. And it was the media that created the aliens there, too. So, just pay attention to what they're saying, what their claims are. There's what is, and there's what is interpreted as. And what I'm trying to give you is what is. And every other interpretation, from shrub to alien to soldier, is all what I was told. And that's exactly what it is. I'm not trying to make any outrageous claims here. I'm just telling you my story.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and take a break here, and we'll come back, and I want to talk some about the whole D.B. Cooper connection that you have there, and a few other things. So, well, everybody out there tuning in, we're going to take about a 7-minute break or so. So stick around, don't go anywhere. We'll continue this fascinating discussion with Clyde Lewis, the host of Ground Zero Radio. So stay tuned when we find which one we're going to cue off here. So back in a moment, everyone.
Visit www.shadowsinthedarkradio.com today to sign up for our free newsletter. Join as a member of our forum or browse our online store where you can find books, CDs, and DVDs, like a signed copy of The President's Vampire by Robert Damon Schneck, or the complete works of Dr. Gary Frick for only $20. That's 4 books signed by Dr. Frick that carry a great message. You will also find downloadable products like Mysteries Magazine and the Donald Kehoe interviews, DVDs featuring Charlie Carlson and Mr. Lobo. So go to www.shadowsinthedarkradio.com today and be a part of the show.
Welcome back, everyone. You are tuned in to Shadows in the Dark right here on Blog Talk Radio at blogtalkradio.com. We are also syndicated on Planet Paranormal at planetparanormal.com, ParaX at para-x.com, Paranormal UFO Radio Network at paranormalradionetwork.com, as well as Black Ball Radio at blackballradio.com. I'm going to remember all those at some point in time. Well, if you just tuned in, we are talking with Clyde Lewis tonight, and he is the host of Ground Zero Radio. And Clyde, the law keeps telling me to ask you about Tracy.
Oh, the Tracy UFO crash.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is sort of the really old stories that Olaf was a part of back in the day when we were doing investigations. There was actually a huge ball of fire that came down over Tracy, Northern California. I think that was about the time I hooked up with Olaf. I think that because he's from Northern California. And one of the things that we did was that we got interviews with people who said they saw this thing come down out of the sky as far away as Idaho. I got a report when I worked for a company called Earthmail that there was a huge UFO crash and that it was seen in Reno. And I had some people who worked at a Reno radio station. And it was quite funny because it was reported all over the news, and I was listening to the Art Bell show wondering if he was ever going to talk about it. And it was funny because that night he was having an open line for aliens to call in. And some guy had called the show, and he says, "Hi, I'm from Tracy, California, and I have entered the body of a man who is sleeping in front of the television set." And I thought, that's the best we can do, right? It's some fat guy who's drunk, has the alien soul of this thing that crashed in Tracy, California. But what had happened, it was interesting because I'd interviewed a bunch of people. One guy happened to be a police officer, a woman in Idaho, another guy in California who lived in the Walking Valley at the time. And I had sent out an email saying, I want people who have seen anything in Tracy, send me some information about what they saw or if they saw anything. And I also thought to myself, well, if a UFO had crashed in Tracy, California in the middle of August, because it was a hot night, it was about 102 degrees the night it came down, then obviously there has to be an explanation or some fire burning somewhere in a field somewhere. Well, what had happened is there was a tire fire. There was this huge tire dump that caught fire simultaneously at the time of this big fireball coming out of the sky. And reports of things being taken to Lawrence Livermore Labs by way of flatbed truck covered with all kinds of nylon covering, and people said that they thought what they saw was this huge flying saucer that was being carried back to Lawrence Livermore Labs, and stories of people being told to stay in their homes and not leave because the air quality is so bad. And apparently in that area near Davis and places like that, there happened to be some sort of a plant that would spew out chemicals, and they would tell people to stay away in case there was some sort of a problem. And the guy, his name was Silas Royster, the man who owned the tire dump, was actually trying to put the fire out with a bulldozer. And after he was attempting to do this, I guess they found him dead on his tractor. It sounded like a really interesting X-Files story, where people see this UFO crash. People claim that they saw, emergency vehicles going to the area, military vehicles taking something out on a flatbed truck. The San Francisco Chronicle basically saying that nothing happened. It was probably a meteor. But more people saying that they saw all kinds of strangeness, and then this tire fire that breaks out that had burned for years. I mean, it had burned for a long time. But the man who owned the tire dump, Silas Royster, tried to put the fire out with a bulldozer. He ended up dying on his bulldozer. It was just a really creepy story.
Wow.
A lot more detail with it. I mean, that's one of the stories that it's called Fallen Angel, and you can find it on my website at groundzeromedia.org. A lot of stories I've written in the past about some experiences and investigations I had gone on and I had investigated, and they all came up being mysteries and strangeness, and not many clues and not many answers, but certainly a lot of mystery.
Now, Olaf was saying something about a fax. He says, don't forget the fax.
Oh, the fax. Yeah, gosh, Olaf, you remember this more than I do. The fax that we got, Olaf got a fax that basically confirmed that something had flown over the San Francisco Bay Area and was hit by a kinetic kill vehicle. I guess that's what the KKV was fired on it. And some of the witnesses who had said that they saw this thing come in said that it looked like some sort of an intruder that was going to do some sort of a kamikaze flight in or something, and that they saw another vehicle or a jet or a helicopter or something try to bring it down, and they fired something at it, and it hit, and a piece of it flew off, and it fell into the area of the San Joaquin Valley. So, that's a case that, and I actually went to I went to the San Francisco UFO Fest, and I was there speaking. That's where I finally met Olaf face to face, and there was actually a bunch of people there who had known of my file on the Tracy story, and they were asking me questions about it. And I said, actually, I was filing the story from my office in Salt Lake City, Utah, being told about the UFO landing from a radio station in Reno, and being referred to a number of witnesses in Boise, Idaho. So it was like witnesses in Boise talking about a UFO that was reported in Reno, talking about a UFO that crash landed somewhere in Northern California near San Francisco, and me filing the story sitting in my office somewhere in downtown Salt Lake City. So it's kind of like one of those, pass the message, and people sending me information about, military trying to bring down some craft, the craft being sent to Lawrence Livermore Labs. What's really interesting is that after that whole thing went down, Lawrence Livermore made an announcement about 2 years later that they have now created some sort of a flying, some sort of aircraft that could fly you to China in, 2 hours?
Right, yeah.
It was kind of interesting.
Now, TRF from the chat room is asking, what did the guy on the bulldozer die of?
Well, he had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that because I did the investigation. I knew he had cancer, so he probably just died from the cancer. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to spin a yarn of
right.
Some conspiracy trying to kill him, but it makes you wonder, why this guy would be, why he would do what he'd do.
Mm.
So it's kind of a really creepy story. I mean, UFO. It's a story of UFOs, tire fires, toxic chemicals, and some strange aircraft that was taken back to Lawrence Livermore Labs to be tested. So maybe reverse engineered. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. It looks like Lov had said something in the chat room that he had researched it out. He said he'd be right back, and now his number is popping up, so it looks like he's calling in.
Oh, good.
So let's get him on the line. Hey, Lov, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing good.
So, Olaf, did you do more investigation into the Tracy story that we filed years ago?
Oh, no. But I remember a few more of the details that I thought the audience would get a kick out of.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, and because you got the facts, because we were working together on this story to try and uncover what had really crashed in San Francisco back in the 1990s.
So basically, it was really late at night. I think it was like 1 in the morning or something. And I get this phone call from Clyde at like 1 in the morning, and it wasn't necessarily uncommon if something was going on. But Clyde calls me and tells me, a UFO crash in Tracy, which I lived in Davis and was probably about an hour from my house, plus or minus. And I was like, a UFO crash near my house, yeah, whatever. He's like, no. He was adamant. No. This is real. So what happened is that, we had done some initial research and discussed it on his show. There's a fair amount of interest because the thing had actually been cited all the way, like he was saying, we lined up, this is before Google Maps obviously, but we had lined up sightings where it had come in from the north over the ocean and then shot across basically the western states. And we had a whole series of witnesses in the times, we knew, I forget now, but we knew exactly how long it took basically from the first sighting, I think it was up in Washington State somewhere, down into where I live, California. Now, so I had an e-fax number. I always told people, if you have something to tell me, fax me. But nobody ever did. And, it wasn't a great source of information. Well, I get a fax, and I believe Clyde got a fax as well. But I got a fax, and our faxes were different. Clyde got a fax first, I think, and this had to what's called the DSP network. It's a deep space probe network that's used for ostensibly for tracking inbound nuclear missiles that they can
Hey, Alov, are you pacing in the backyard? Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, you're starting to break up.
Okay. So the DSP network is designed to detect nuclear missiles being launched and, give us some amount of warning so that we can launch a retaliatory strike. Well, there are also stories that this defense network of satellites is also used to monitor inbound and outbound UFO activity. That these things trip this network of satellites. And what Clyde's fax had said is that this object that we were researching that crashed in Tracy had tripped this network, and actually they were watching it in real time using a modified Keyhole satellite. But instead of using a standard Keyhole satellite, if your listeners don't know what a Keyhole satellite is, a KH, like a KH-14 or whatever, these are surveillance satellites. They have such resolution that when I was a kid, I read a book about surveillance satellites. I was a messed up kid. But back then in the 80s, the resolution was so fine that you could actually read a book that somebody had put on their chest. There's a picture of a guy laying in Sunnyvale in a hammock with War and Peace open on his chest, and you could actually read the page of the book on his chest. This is like in the 80s. Well, Clyde's fax indicated that they were watching it in real time using a modified satellite that used some sort of weird organic lens. And at the time, it was like, well, that sounds insane. I mean, you like conspiracies, you like UFOs, etc. It doesn't mean that you buy into everything, right? You get a fax and they talk about using an organic lens. It's like, well, it's like you're insane. Go back to your antipsychotics. Well, so we did a little research. Clyde sends me this fax, and we did a little research, and it turned out that they were monkeying with organic lenses, and what this modified satellite was capable of doing was not so much they used the Keyhole platform, right, the base satellite, but it wasn't so much designed for spying on the Earth. It was more designed for watching objects moving in orbit around the Earth and being able to track them, because your eye is able to track things much faster than a camera. So they basically built an organic eyeball and affixed it onto the end of a surveillance satellite so that they could use the logic of the surveillance satellite to process the images coming from effectively an eyeball. The second fax was sent by somebody else. It was sent to me. I've never been able to figure out where it came from. There was no indication of a number that it originated from. And once again, it was one of these stories that sounded completely nuts. And basically the story, basically the story was that when that a object, now remember this is a separate fax, right, sent at a completely different time to a completely different number, tells me that there was an object, the object in Tracy, that set off the defense network, this TSP network, and that they had scrambled 2 F-18s from then NAS Alameda, which is across the bay from San Francisco. No longer an active base, but back then it was actually a very active base, and there was an F-18 squadron that flew out of there, and that these 2 F-18s had gone out over the Pacific Ocean and launched what's called a KKV, or kinetic kill vehicle, against this thing as it was descending. And at the time, again, it sounded kind of nuts because typically these kind of KKV is effectively an anti-satellite missile. They're not launched at objects inside the atmosphere, and they're also not launched from F-18s. Typically, this kind of missile will be launched from an F-16 or an F-8 or an F-15. It's more of an Air Force kind of operation than Navy kind of operation. So the first thing that popped in my head was, this has to be wrong. That, that kind of plane can't carry the thing. It doesn't, what he's describing doesn't exist. So I went and did some research, and actually it turned out that the squadron at Alameda was one of the few F-18 squadrons that actually had these devices and these missiles, and they had retrofitted some of the F-18s to be able to carry them, and that the type of missile that this thing vaguely talked about did exist. And so then all the dots started to connect. You now had all the sightings of it coming in over from the north and arcing going east. You have, an explanation of there was a bright flash was seen over the Pacific Ocean. You have somebody saying that there was a pair of F-18s that were actually launched. There were 2 F-18s that were scrambled, fired a device that does exist, apparently hit something. There's flash, and then people see a fireball go over the Bay Area out to the east toward where Tracy is. Then you have a fire that nobody's ever figured out how it started. Apparently it was a brush fire that ignited the tires, and it burned for about three and a half years. So
yeah, that's some details that Olaf could fill in. I just remember the facts, as I remember the strangeness and the frustration of getting the story out there, and people saying that they saw something. And to this day, the Tracy UFO story is still something that remains as an open file in the Ground Zero area. We do have the information that Olaf has about the F-18s being scrambled. We do not know what came in that night. We don't know who crashed that night. We just know that some strange stories were being told, and it was getting so it was so interesting. There were people who were actually coming in from Northern California, flying into Utah to come and speak on the show about what went on, and we did some really good coverage of it. I wish I could find some of the old shows about it.
There was a firefighter, I think, that actually had sighted some of the debris.
Yeah, exactly. We had firefighters talking about it. We had just a number of people talking about it, and to this day, it is never. I mean, I think they still, some people still talk about the Tracy crash. I just don't know if, even though the paper said that the San Francisco Chronicle said that it was a meteor, they did quote me as saying that I think it's frustrating when anything falls from the sky and some astronomer can get called at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, it's quite probably a meteor, especially now when we have UFO sightings everywhere from Chicago to Great Britain to everywhere else. So, yeah, I mean, these are some pretty interesting stories.
Well, also, at the time that it actually occurred, in the Bay Area, we have a radio station called KGO. It's like I think it's like 50,000 watts or 100,000 watts or whatever. It's the largest AM radio station on the West Coast, and you can hear it as far north as Canada, as far south as Mexico, and as far inland as actually Utah and Wyoming. And people were calling into the radio show that was on at the time saying that they were watching this thing basically tumble across the sky. And one of the interesting things, also KCBS, which is like our local kind of 24 hours news radio, everybody's got one station. It's like the traffic of well, CBS for us, and CBS. And one thing, of course, that one had been hit. It was tumbling across the sky, going over people's heads. It was actually fairly large and fairly on fire, and it was actually making course corrections that it had. It's something that a meteorite won't do. A meteorite just goes straight down. This thing was actually kind of weaving and moving around, and it looked like somebody was trying to make a controlled descent.
Right, exactly. That just brings back the memories of a hot August night when that happened.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was still in college when that happened. But
and Lon, you're gonna have to quit pacing when you're on the show.
Yeah, I really should stop.
So it says the Illuminati is jamming your phone. I'm beginning to believe it. Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, Lon, thanks for calling in. You know, it's always a pleasure having you on.
No sweat. I knew the details, so I thought I'd call in.
Thank you for the details. It's like I say, these things happened so long ago. It's good that people remember, some of the stories we covered back in the days where Ground Zero was, ruthless. We still are to a certain degree, but that was basically we were right there, making sure we got everything right and getting a lot of interesting things out there. In fact, we were very, very competitive at the time.
Well, the thing that always struck me about Tracy, though, is that the other story that always comes to mind in my mind around what happened to Tracy was Kecksburg. And you have a very similar set of circumstances, but the whole Tracy situation was dropped like a hot potato. I mean, it died faster, than anything I've ever seen. I mean, Kecksburg still goes on to this day. Oh, I saw this bell-shaped thing. Was it the bell that, Joseph talks about, or was it a Russian satellite, or what was it? It had hieroglyphics, yada, yada. Tracy died. I mean, the story just dropped. It's like one day somebody just pulled the plug out of it and it just went away. So it's very, very strange. Probably the strangest thing I've ever worked on.
Yeah, it's a great story, and maybe someday somebody will pick up on it. Usually these UFO stories, somebody says, hey, I want to do a story about this. It's kind of like, I wanted to do a story about the Maury Island affair, and people have already dismissed that as a hoax, but I found that being over on the Maury Island area, near Vashon in Seattle, there are people there that still believe to this day and still say to this day that, yes, there was a UFO, a squadron of UFOs that flew over Maury Island. They did dump some slag onto a boat and killed a dog, and one of the men that were involved with the case was actually involved with the JFK assassination. So really fascinating stuff, the way you connect the dots, the way people will, even though they say it's a hoax, people will turn around and say, well, we saw something. And the government or whomever, the media or whoever you want to point to and point the finger at is trying to sound stories. They're really good at it. Well,
the other one that died really fast was the one in South America with those guys that were talking to the UFO on the shortwave radio. The Chilean story called Friendship. Yeah. That was another story that died quickly, and I actually have a recording of the transmissions between the aliens and the fishermen in Chile. Oh. And I played that occasionally. And in fact, if you go to ideocast.com, go into my Ground Zero shows. There are 3 channels available. If you go into Ground Zero, I think it's Continuum, you can actually go to the archives, and there is the Friendship report that we did the story, and I actually have linguists from Monterey and several other people trying to decipher the dialects of the voices of the aliens that were broadcast over the shortwave radios in Chile and the archipelago down there by Santiago, which is very interesting. If memory serves, they were never able to identify the accent. There was like perfect colloquial Spanish, but there was like no accent. It was no accent at all. In fact, I had another linguist take a listen to the aliens, and they were saying that it was an electronic. They only can determine that it was an electronic broadcast of the voices that they were speaking in was known as Peninsular Spanish. The only thing that he said is that it sounded closest. The only thing he could say is it was closest to maybe a Hebrew or a Jewish accent, but he wasn't exactly sure. He says it was not English, it wasn't German, and in fact, a lot of people speculated it was German, but it was neither. In fact, they said that it was more straight Hebrew or another accent that they could not detect. So it's interesting to hear the information when you're listening to the alien broadcast. I mean, it is in Spanish, and it has been translated, and
like I say, if you go to ideocast.com, that's IDEOCAST.com, and go to Ground Zero Continuum, go to the archives, and look for the Friendship Enigma, you'll be able to hear the whole show. And there's also another thing about alleged alien broadcasts from the one in England that was from, what was his name, the one that was broadcast over the radios in England or the televisions in England. Just a lot of interesting alleged alien broadcasts.
But those are another topic where, you covered it. I mean, it got picked up. People talked about it for about, a week, and then they just died a very quick death. I mean, you're the only one who covered it.
Yeah, I still get emails. In fact, the Chilean fishermen sometimes write me and they tell me that they wish the story would have gotten picked up, but apparently it got shut down.
Well, it's funny. A lot of the topics that we covered at the time on Ground Zero, these were very valid stories, and they were very well researched. That we went the extra mile to make sure that we verified that these things happened and that they were real and they were genuine enigmas. But it was kind of like at the time, some of the behemoths of the broadcasting system. I mean, they wouldn't touch it. They were talking about I don't know, like people being abducted by government agencies or whatever, but they would never make the leap of talking about something that was more carefully researched and I mean, it had a
well, it was around the time of the companion of the Hale-Bopp. That basically took the center stage, and the Lights of Phoenix and the Heaven's Gate cult, which of course I was investigated by the FBI because of my connections as far as to Daryl Johnson, who happened to be a member of Heaven's Gate and was also in a band called Dharma Combat, who lived in Vernal, Utah, and who kept in contact with me and talking about Heaven's Gate and the interesting things that they were involved with. They were working with the government on some software for what was known as the Rainbow Brigade. I mean, and that was another story that was dropped. I don't think you hear much about the Heaven's Gate cult and how they were involved with the government, and then how they had to do some sort of mystical stuff, software that they were using to communicate with remote viewing. In fact, a number of people like Ed Dames and several other people were all involved with the remote viewing of a companion with the Hale-Bopp comet. And even though to this day Art Bell says he had nothing to do with talking about this and bringing it forward, he did, because of all the people that were involved with his show pushing the idea of this companion that was out there, and that and I'm not at all inferring that he had anything to do with the Heaven's Gate cult committing suicide, but the idea that they were involved with government programs, they were involved with making programs to simulate certain types of remote viewing, certain types of communications with beings from other planets, this type of thing, and then for some odd reason they're found all dead, and with the suicide note saying they're going on the away team for the companion of the comet Hale-Bopp. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, these are the type of things that as much as people would like to believe the paranormal to be something to be very, very, very fantastic and over the top, Olaf and I in the past have realized that a lot of it is pretty damn boring, mediocre.
Yeah.
And it's mediocre not from the sense that these things don't happen. It's mediocre from the sense that a lot of it has to do with government collusion. A lot of it has to do with stories that are misinterpreted by media, stories that are influenced and otherwise overblown by the media. And there are skeptics out there that will discredit and say, well, none of this stuff happens. But the truth of the matter is, it does happen. But the story you get and the sensational stories you get on some of these late night talk shows are sensationalist. They're based on templates that have already been provided for people. Sure, insert alien here, insert anal probe here, insert experiment here, insert you need to protect the Earth from nuclear disaster here. It's all a program. And I much find that the stories that don't have those in there are the ones that are the most important and the ones that are the most interesting. And so I find those stories far more interesting than the ones that have the same old, and the same reports of anal probing and things of that nature. I think that there's a whole new ufology to be explored out there, and I think some people are missing the boat.
Right.
Well, they're also the ones that are the most quickly silenced. I mean, to have somebody do some research about a mound in the middle of the desert and say, okay, well, this could be something that crashed, eons ago that's a football field in size, blah, blah, blah. It's very much a kind of situation where there's no evidence. You're making a series of weird assumptions and leaps, and, it's embellished, and, these things go on and on and on and on, but, you get a few of the weird stories, more of the edgy stuff that we used to get on Ground Zero.
Well, see, already I'm looking in the chat room, and somebody, I don't know if they're joking or not, has put, it was claimed that Jesus was on a spaceship hidden behind the Hale-Bopp comet. That's not true. What was believed was that there was a woman by the name of, I think her name was T or whatever, had died. It was Marshall Applewhite's wife, and she apparently had gone to the evolutionary level above human. And if you take the evolutionary level above human, the words evolutionary level above human, and you turn it into an acronym, it spells out the word Elah. Elah, of course, is the ancient word for God. Now, if you take the word Elah and you invert it, it spells out the word Hale, like Hale-Bopp, which, in my opinion, that kind of coded phrasing and coded wording is pretty much a part of some sort of a program. And so I have a belief that there was some sort of programming and tinkering going on. Of course, Marshall Applewhite was a part of the testing that was going on at Berkeley and several other places, and he was actually being treated for a mental illness called homosexuality. And so was a number of other well-known people that have been known to hear voices and create cults, such as people like Charles Manson and others, which makes me wonder if, people like Applewhite and all the others were MK Ultra stooges that basically got loose and they're a breed that's dying off, and he was one of the last ones to go.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jim Jones has a very, very colorful history with MK Ultra and, mind control operations himself. I mean, he was heavily linked to the CIA, and, but yeah, I think it is a generation of mind control zombies that are definitely dying off. I mean, you don't hear about the little Catcher in the Rye thing anymore either.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the guy who wrote Catcher in the Rye, he was part of CIA intelligence and also part of the MK Ultra program. A number of people also that were involved with, there's this book that Oprah was pushing during the Barack Obama campaign, and I can't remember the name of it. I think it's Towards a New Century or something. I can't remember the name of it. But the people who were involved with it actually wrote another book about self-help, and both of them worked for the MK Ultra program for the CIA. And so when people are asking, well, why did everybody immediately go nuts for Barack Obama, and it was almost like there was this cult-like attitude about Barack Obama? Well, there's reasons behind it, because many of the ideas that were being proposed and many of the propaganda that was being used in the Barack Obama campaign was taken right out of the book of the MK Ultra program. And it was taken right out of the books of the not only the MK Ultra program, but the Nazis. People just don't realize that yes, we can. That phrase, yes, we can, was actually a phrase that Hitler used to get people to get behind him back in the 1930s. So, I mean, things work, and if they work, they use them over and over again. It just happens to be one of those things.
Well, anyway, so that was my contribution. I'll get off.
Right.
All right. Well,
Jesus was not on the comet. Just reading TRF plural. Jesus was not on the comet, TRF. No, it was not Jesus. It was not popularly circulated at all. Jesus was not on the comet. And they did not swallow rat poison or cyanide. They took barbiturates, and they also took applesauce. I know because I was called by the FBI. I was called by the FBI, and there you go. They told me everything that went on.
Huh.
So that's what's happening.
Well, let me say thanks to Allah for calling in there. He's already hung up there, so he's moved on. So thanks Allah for joining us.
Yeah, there are a lot of people in the chat room. I'm sure that they're trying to be funny, but it's this is pretty serious stuff. A lot of it's serious, and a lot of it has some very, very interesting I guess you could say branches and trees and connections. And if you take the time to look at the connections, if you take the time for looking at those things, TRF, that's fine. At least you're looking into it. I'm looking at TRF to apologize.
Right.
No, you're fine, dude. I love the fact that you're even participating and you're looking into it. I think it's awesome. I think that people the media tends to twist things, and if you really, really dig and you find the reality of it all, you're going to find, as I said with Olaf, it can be pretty mundane.
Right.
They do twist things, and they make things sound better than they really are. They make things sound more hideous than they really are. And what's the reality is that somewhere, if you connect the dots and you find out there was something that triggered the response of the media to pay attention to this sort of thing. And it's because somebody that's inside knew that it would make a great story, and they were trying to tie Heaven's Gate to Waco, and they were trying to tie to Jim Jones and the situation at Jonestown, and it just did not happen that way. There's much more to Heaven's Gate than there is to these other things, and they just completely silenced it because they didn't want people to know of the special programs that the military was involved with, which included witchcraft and Satanism, and that's one of the reasons why they killed the story. If you want to know the truth, you read a book called Men Who Stare at Goats. Read that book, The Men Who Stare at Goats. And if you want to read that book, it's written by a guy who, in fact, there's going to be a movie made about it starring George Clooney. It's called Men Who Stare at Goats. Read that book, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's an interesting book that talks about what was going on with the processes of staring at goats to make hearts stop, and the remote viewing with Ed Dames and several other people, and the Rainbow Brigade, and the satanic witchcraft going on in the military. It's really an interesting story.
I have to pick that up. That does sound like the Men Who Stared at Goats, right?
Yeah, The Men Who Stare at Goats. It's going to be made into Superior Awesomeness. It's going to be awesome. It really is, because having George Clooney in it is even going to be better, because I can just imagine how he's going to smirk through the whole thing, and it's going to be a fun movie to watch. And I read the book, and it made me kind of smile too, because these are some of the strange things that our government invests in and pays for.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And just to let you know, we've got about 14 minutes or so left, and but before, I want to get a little bit into the D.B. Cooper thing before we run out of time.
Sure.
But before I do that, I have to mention this, because Superior Awesomeness, who's one of our listeners from Sweden, as a matter of fact, who tunes in live with us. So you had a show on throat singing, or had some or did some stuff with throat singing, and Superior Awesomeness has become a huge throat singing fan since we've done our show on that. And,
right.
And so, what exactly did y'all do in regards to throat singing? Because you were telling me a little bit about it before.
There's a throat singer in Portland, Oregon. His name is Soraya,
mm-hmm.
and I am good friends with him. And he goes to Tuva every once in a while to do throat singing. And throat singing is the ability for a person to open his throat and actually have like 3 or 4 voices come out at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing phenomenon. And what we did is it was used by the Tuvans to actually contact the spirit world. And I had ventured a guess that it could also be used to contact the spirit world and also to contact aliens. And so we basically used it around the time that I think Saturn was actually sending out messages, sending out some sort of a message. I had actually decided that I wanted to do that with our throat singer. In fact, if you go to ideocast.com, you can look up that too. It's on the channel where you can listen to, and we have him also on our Ground Zero Lounge. You go to the Ground Zero Lounge channel, and there you can take a listen to him, Soraya. And so Superior Awesomeness, if you're into throat singing, you can take a listen to him. He's very good. He went to Tuva, and I think he got 3rd place in a contest.
Wow.
So he's a really good throat singer. So go ahead. If you Superior Awesomeness, you're there in the chat room, I see you. Go ahead and do that. You'd really like it. It's ideocast.com. That's IDEOCAST. Excuse me, ideocast.com.
Yeah, and I got to watch some of the footage with him on the Ground Zero Lounge, and he's very good. I mean, throat singing it's an amazing thing. I mean, just the way they can do that, and I've been trying to learn it myself.
Oh, cool.
So maybe one day I'll get on here and make a fool of myself doing it. But,
right. Well, you gotta. It's worse than death metal. I think the death metal people could do that. It'd be funny. It's hard to do. Just double bass it, and everybody will do the double bass, and I think you'll be able to pull it off.
Yeah. So, but it is great. Yeah, it's great stuff. We play a lot of Hoonhor too on here. Ashu Dikio is one of our favorite songs to play.
Oh, really?
During the breaks, yeah.
It's kind of like listening to the didgeridoo.
Yeah.
it's kind of like human didgeridoo. So that's kind of interesting stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. We've got about 11 so minutes left. So let's talk about this D.B. Cooper connection that you have, because this case is always amazing. Because I mean, it's it's an unsolved case. There's so much speculation. There's been so many suspects. It's just an amazing case.
Right. Well, the way I got thrust into the case was that I was having coffee with a friend of mine at a place called the Ross Island Grocery in Portland, and I'm drinking coffee, and he says to me, "Hey, Clyde, you ought to take a look at the D.B. Cooper case. I got a new suspect." I'm thinking, yeah, who now? Big deal. It's not something I've been told, this guy's D.B. Cooper. It's almost like everybody's D.B. Cooper, like everybody's Napoleon. And so he said, no, you really ought to pay attention to this guy. He's a FBI agent, and he may want to be a guest on your show. And I'm going, okay, fine, whatever. And I basically looked at the pictures, and as I was looking at the pictures, I noticed that the guy looked familiar. And then all of a sudden, I see him with a goatee and a priest outfit. I'm going, holy crap, that's Wolfgang Gossett, a guy that I know. And I knew him for 3 years, and I've been trying to find him, and I was really excited that, I actually thought it's really exciting that I know the new suspect of the D.B. Cooper case. But the guy that, Galen Cook, the guy who's been investigating for many years, and he believes he has his man. And there's so many things about it. I went to Depot Bay, Oregon, to try and track down people who knew him, and apparently he had been kind of a loner towards the end of his life. He would spend up to $500, $600 a night on video poker, gambling, and apparently the money that he stole is a bank somewhere in Vancouver, British Columbia, and no one knows how they're going to get a hold of it. But they're trying to find the money. I also went on with a group of California FBI group out of California. We actually was going on the Columbia River to try and find any kind of any kind of evidence to show that his money was there. Trying to find that and look into that, and it was really hard to find that because he was very good at hiding. But they just recently had a D.B. Cooper get-together. The D.B. Cooper get-together was in Ariel, Washington, and this is where the FBI had stated that he had gone down. And I cannot believe that this is where he had come down because it was such a remote area. What I believe is that he jumped out of a plane in a place called Battleground, Washington, and he jumped out of the plane there, and then what had happened is there canyon winds had come out, and those canyon winds basically made him drift into a place called St. John's, Oregon. And so he didn't land on the Washington side. He landed on the Oregon side. So the FBI have basically written off the case because they decided that their searching was the right idea, and it happens to be the wrong idea. Mm-hmm. So, that's the thing. It's just a matter of now we have an idea of where he might have landed. We have an idea of how he flagged down a truck that maybe, get to the airport and fly back to Salt Lake City. So there you go.
Now, what kind of evidence really points towards him being, a prime suspect?
His look, for one thing. I mean, his look, he looks a lot like the suspect. His character, there's also something that I know about him that I can't talk about on the show because it's classified. There's something about his character that I knew about that I testified about that D.B. Cooper also has the same type of thing that he did, that the stewardesses noticed, some sort of mannerisms that he had that I described the mannerisms, and they actually were mannerisms that those who knew Wolfgang knew that he had. In fact, that was one of the reasons why the widow of Wolfgang wanted to talk to me, because I knew of those characteristics of him, and so does the stewardesses, the pilots, and all those other people. They do know that that's him, and that's the thing, is that we have DNA too. They have DNA on a tie, and we're going to try to match the DNA that we found on him. He has like a headband that he wore, and we have hair on the headband, so we're going to be able to match the DNA as well.
Oh, wow. Now, when is that supposed to kind of take place?
I don't know. The FBI is kind of dragging its feet on this whole case, and I think it's because of the fact that if they really to get deep into the subject matter, they're going to find that Mr. Gossett also worked for the FBI, mm-hmm. and that the plane's the $200,000 that he took from the plane actually was done out of protest. It was a protest. It was not for the money. It was not for fame. It was just because he was protesting some certain things that were going on in the FBI. So I think that's one of the reasons why they're not moving too quickly on this, is because the FBI has worries that perhaps it was one of their own guys that did it, threw them off the trail, and he was one of our own. And in my opinion, and people I talked with when I was in Ariel, Washington, you wouldn't believe the people who say that they believe that he's a hero. He's a real hero. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that is kind of reading here that he said that he bragged about this to his sons and showed them the safety deposit box, or the key to it. Huh.
Yep, and he also one of the things that he also did is he told a judge in Salt Lake City, Utah, I'm D.B. Cooper, what am I supposed to do? And it says, keep your mouth shut, don't tell anybody. And so he kept it quiet. I mean, he worked for the Missing Persons Bureau in Bountiful, Utah. He investigated occult fraud and knew everything there was to know about investigating anything from UFOs to intelligence operations and how to set up intelligence operations. He was a priest for the Antioch Catholic Church. It was a good cover. And he also knew, and one of the suspects that was shot and killed, it was believed to be a D.B. Cooper suspect, was from Utah. He was killed in Provo. So, they lead the suspect to a Utah case, and what they're doing is they're looking in the wrong place. It just happens, you get close sometimes. Even I feel that way. I'm close, but I'm not on it yet. I'm close, but I haven't made it yet. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do. I mean, you look at the stories and you try to see them for what they are, and you don't try to make too many crazy conclusions, but you at least throw pasta at the wall and hope that some of it sticks. That's exactly what it is.
Now, and it's kind of, you mentioned about, him possibly being, part of the FBI, because I've heard kind of things, along the D.B. Cooper case about covert operations, that D.B. Cooper was involved in covert operations.
Yeah, he was an intelligence officer.
Yeah, so that's just...
Probably a man in black, if you want to,
Yeah.
If you want to, if you want to, look at it that way, you probably could have been one of those men in black G-men, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Wow, that's... So TRF is asking, was your testimony sealed?
Testimony sealed. I saw that. I don't know what he means by that. I haven't said anything in court. I just talked about to the investigators exactly what I know about Wolfgang Gossett and about the character of D.B. Cooper. All I was doing was that I said that he has certain mannerisms that only the stewardesses would know about.
Right.
He has some mannerisms that only they would know about and that I know about, and the mannerisms match. In fact, I even said that he smoked a certain type of cigarette and it matched. I said I remember the cigarettes he smoked, and how we were fans of cheeseburgers, and we would go eat cheeseburgers. In fact, that's how I became a cheeseburger addict, was I ate cheeseburgers with D.B. Cooper. And he hung out at a bar in Utah called D.B. Cooper's all the time. That was another interesting anomaly.
Oh, wow.
So he hung out at a bar called D.B. Cooper's, and then they had this aerial get-together, and I found his card there. So it's kind of an interesting kind of turn of events, and I hope that we find out more about this gentleman, Wolfgang Gossett. I think that if he was looking at me from the grave, I think he'd be damn happy that I'm doing this investigation, and that Galen Cook's doing it too. He's a good man.
That was cool. It's a fascinating case, and I've been intrigued by it for a few years now, and it's amazing. I mean, just the whole story behind it, and everything that the parachuting out and being, even the stories of being nice to the stewardesses. And
right. He was nice to the stewardess. He only swore once, and that's basically how he is. And no, I did not testify in any court of law under any oath whatsoever. And so no, I did not testify. And it's just right now is I did not want to reveal, because there's an ongoing investigation. I didn't want to reveal the characteristics of Wolfgang Gossett until it's open and part of the record of the investigation.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm keeping it quiet. It's not because I'm trying to hide anything from anybody. It's not what I do. It's just a matter of as a point of integrity, I am not going to ruin any part of the case that Mr. Galen Cook is involved with. I'm trying to keep that pretty much to the vest until it's revealed finally.
Yeah, that's understandable. So, Clyde, we've just got a couple minutes left here for start closing out the show. So if you'll give us your website again and where they can go and listen to archives of Ground Zero and anything else.
Let's see. Okay, first of all, there's a lot of them because there's a lot of people who support Ground Zero and love the show. I'd like to thank you guys for having me on. It's awesome because that just, brings out all the old shows again. Mm-hmm. We have websites. Ideocast.com is the place to listen to Ground Zero now. All the updated shows from the Ground Zero Lounge to Ground Zero Live to Ground Zero Continuum. These are shows that show different facets of Ground Zero. 3 channels on Ideocast.com. That's IDEOCAST.com. Also, they are now running reruns of the classic Ground Zero shows at GroundZeroTotalRecall.com. GroundZeroTotalRecall.com. If you want to read my articles, GroundZeroMedia.org is the place to do that. If you want to watch the videos of the Ground Zero Lounge, just go to Google Video and type in Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Lounge, and you'll be able to see some of the shows. One of the best shows we have out there right now is called Grounds for Baphomet. It features Rex Church from the Church of Satan and also Freeman Fry from the Freeman Perspective in Austin, Texas. Some fascinating stuff being talked about on those shows, and those are some of the things I could recommend that you really want to feel the gist of Ground Zero and how we go about investigating things and how we go about it from more of a practical perspective. I think you'll really enjoy the shows.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely be checking it out myself, and we'll get some of those. We have the Ground Zero Media website linked off of ours, and we'll get the other ones up there as well.
All right, fantastic.
So that'll be great. Well, Clayton, definitely, it was an honor having you on. I enjoyed talking to you tonight. It was just some fascinating stuff, and I hope that you'll definitely come back and join us sometime in the near future.
I would love it. And I'd like to say hello to everybody in your chat room, everybody out there. Just I'm looking at you all talk. We're waving from over here. It's really nice to be able to be a part of this, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here and talk about some of those old investigations we did. And Olaf, thank you for filling in the blanks about some of the things that we've been involved with, too.
Olaf has been a great supporter of our show here, and we love having him a part of it. And I know he's talked very highly of your show as well.
Well, thank you.
So that is great. So, well, Clyde, again, thank you so much. And if you don't mind, can you just hang on with us, stay on the line, don't go anywhere? Sure. All right, okay. Sounds good. Well, everybody, again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight and such a great turnout for the chat room as well. We really appreciate that. That it's just great to see that many people hanging out with us tonight and listening live. And if you're listening on the archive, of course, we know many do, so we really appreciate that as well. Now, coming up this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, let's see what we got coming on. We've got Ted Phillips coming on. That's going to be interesting. We can talk about some of the UFO investigations that he has been a part of, and his Special Investigations Unit, his SIU unit that deals with UFO sightings, and we're going to talk in particularly about his investigations into the Marley Woods. They've got a DVD out about this. It really sounds like a very interesting thing, so make sure you tune in for that. That is going to be Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget, like I said, at some point in the near future, the website is going to be down for a while. That includes the website, the forum, and the web store, so we'll let you know as that gets a little closer, and Alon says that's going to be down just probably for a couple of hours. So, again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight, and again, thanks to Clyde for being our guest tonight. Such a fascinating show, and we will see everybody Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. See you then.
Shadows in the dark.